Day 164. This is such a significant time in your life spiritually. You are developing that discipline of regularly reading the Bible, discovering the joy of doing so. But also you're reading through the New Testament systematically, acquainting yourself with God's word so we may better understand his ways, and that allows us to follow him more faithfully. Galatians chapter 2, this chapter is all about what Paul calls the truth of the gospel. And the truth of the gospel is that we are saved by grace through Jesus, not by anything that we do, not by obedience to the law, not by Jewish tradition, only through Jesus. Paul even went to Jerusalem, and there he met with the leaders, as he'd called them, the pillars in the church. James, the brother of Jesus, who wasn't one of the original disciples, the original apostles, is clearly now the leader of the church in Jerusalem. Cephas, we would call him Peter, and John, and they agree that this is indeed the message. They do encourage him to remember the poor, here specifically a reference to the poor in Jerusalem. And that is why we see in the book of Acts and many of Paul's other letters, he is collecting funds, he is asking for donations, collecting those donations, and then taking them to the church in Jerusalem, to this poor in Judea. Here as well, we see the important theological terms of justification and righteousness. You'll remember we saw them in Romans. They're back here. Just a quick reminder, justification means to be declared righteous, to be declared innocent, just as if we have never sinned. Righteousness is about being in right standing. So justification is the way in which we are made in right standing with God. And that is only by Jesus, his death, his resurrection. If it wasn't for that, if we could be saved, justified by our obedience to the law, then Jesus wouldn't have had to die. But clearly he did. And then Galatians 2 verse 20, I like to think of as the central verse in all of the New Testament. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. And so it's so important that we embrace this truth, that we know this truth of the gospel, that it is not about anything that you or I can do. It is only about what Jesus has already done and continues to do.